Sparky's thoughts.
Bullying. Whether you're on the receiving end of it or you're the one inflicting it on others, it's pretty much something that at some given point in your life, you're going to have some sort of experience with. It's just how humans operate. I don't make the rules. As long as someone feels some sense of superiority over somebody, there's always going to be at least a few of those people that feel like they have to inflict it upon others. Sucks, yes, I know, and whether we're aware of it or not is a whole nother subject. But see, my problem with bullying isn't necessarily with bullying itself, right? Obviously it's not cool. I'm not going out there picking on people, but I think in a lot of regards, it is crucial to character development, right? If I could draw up a perfect world where everyone was just nice to each other and it was sunshine and rainbows and your crush is never gonna reject you, and if she does reject you, she's gonna let you down all nice and cutesy. She's not gonna tell you that you're fucking chopped to your face. She's not gonna tell you to get the hell away from her, but like it wouldn't be that. That's just not the reality of the situation. But one thing that always rubbed me off the wrong way about bullying is how it was depicted in media and how we were told we were supposed to deal with it. I feel like as kids, remember those stupid stop bullying campaigns that Cartoon Network used to air every year, where it was just like, stop bullying, and if you see someone being bullied, you have to report to an adult. Or even how bullying is represented in like pop culture and certain movies, where it's just like this jock aesthetic Love Island contestant looking ass dude bullying some frail nerd with glasses, and it was just them being pressed up against their locker and give me your lunch money, and then the nerd would be like, oh no, don't take my lunch money, like that type of shit. I never really liked that. Not because it wasn't entertaining, but because it wasn't realistic. Bullying is not just black or white, or villain versus bully, or innocent victim versus non-innocent victim. It was always very nuanced. A lot of the times in media, they only tell one side of the story. Someone is unfortunate, someone is the aggressor, and then that's just the bully. But there's so many different scenarios that go into things that can look like bullying that I feel like were never really tackled. So it's kind of hard to get a realistic perspective on bullying or what to even do in situations, because even the solutions weren't that realistic. Oh, tell an adult. Are you out of your fucking mind? Yeah, I'll go ahead and tell an adult if I want the rest of the school to throw me into a fucking locker or shove me into a garbage can. Hey, principal, I'm getting bullied. Minus 100 nerd respect, minus 100 jock respect, minus 100 townie respect. You get the point. Like, it's not that simple, right? You don't just tell on people and then it solves all of your problems. Like, if anything, it encourages more bullying because now you a snitch, right? And the thing is, bullying was already such a nuanced topic, but now we're in 2025. Gen Z and Gen Alpha is the new generation. We used to grow up on Wow Wow Wubsy and Dora and a bunch of shows teaching you basic respect, manners, and just how to be a good person. And now today's generation is growing up on dank memes, terrorism jokes, and viral police takedown compilations. Like, bullying was never that simple, but throw this generation into the mix, and honestly, I wonder how they even deal with it. There's a lot of research that suggests that people are both bullies and victims in life, and I don't necessarily think that's a complete testament to us living in a shitty society or people naturally just being terrible people. However, it's human nature. You might do something that you find okay in your household that you might not necessarily dictate as a problem, and someone feels a way about it, but in their household, they're not encouraged to communicate. So let's say you push someone's buttons based upon some shit that's deemed acceptable in your household. Congratulations, you're now a bully. Now, is your intention to hurt somebody? Not particularly, but it happens. So then that mean girl that bullied you in middle school, it could have been revenge for something that you did and you just had no idea, right? Like, how many times do we have conversations with people, sometimes that we're friends with, and then you hear little things like, when I first met you, I didn't think you liked me, or you said something to me and for a while I hated you. Whole time you have no idea, you didn't even know this person from a can of paint, but all we're doing is living, and then people on the outside perceive our actions, right? My point is, bullying was always nuanced. With Gen Z now, Gen Z and alpha memes are laced with dark humor. It's therapy, right? Everyone knows that economically we got the shit end of the stick. And I'm just talking about economically. There's so many other studies that prove that Gen Z and Alpha are going to get the short end of the stick in many other aspects of life. So we cope by just not running away from the problems, but acknowledging them and laughing at them. Like, it's baked into our lifestyles, even to the point where, like, I see certain videos on TikTok of a teacher dealing with a classroom full of Gen Z kids, and it's like the average thing that's coming out of these kids' mouths are things that would have gotten us suspended back in the day. And let me just make this clear too. I'm Gen Z. I was born in 2003, but I'm like earlier Gen Z, right? So like there's a lot of millennial core in a lot of the things that I came up on. I'm talking about, like, you know, the later generations. But yeah, that's just like a common aspect of how they treat each other. So I just wonder, like, how do they deal with bullying? That quiet kid potentially shooting up the school joke, like, how do they perceive that? Is that just a funny audio? Or is that bullying? Is it edgy or is it bullying? The meta irony makes it impossible to define what the intent is. Is it coping or is it cruelty?
Yeah, I don't know.
Then of course you throw social media into the mix, right? I say this all the time. We are at the point in life, and not even just Gen Z can say this, but pretty much most working class citizens can say, at least 40% on the lower end of our lives now exists on the internet. And let's just be honest, the internet ain't what it used to be. In my video about algorithms, which you guys should definitely watch, that was a pretty fire video, I compared the way the internet used to be with the reality of what it is now. Back then, social media was usually dictated by the friends that you had, so you kind of existed within the echo chamber of the people that you had added as friends. Now we have algorithms, and what does the algorithm favor? Engagement. And unfortunately, what gets the most engagement? Negativity. So online, what could be bullying receives a megaphone. And if you're not laughing, I have to imagine that you're probably perceived as weird, because this is now the new status quo. Laughing at dark humor, making jokes at the expense of countries that are going to war, and then hundreds join. Yo, quick intermission. If you like me or my content, consider following me on Twitch. I go live literally every other day, and definitely follow my second channel, Sparky No Thoughts. I upload there damn near every single day. And also follow me on Instagram if you like me, just like my face, or just want to see what I do with my life. Thank you for your time, and back to the video. So what could be perceived as mobbing is now normalized. The new generations just chalk it up to drama, bookmark it, and then move on. And there's no filter, so there definitely ain't gonna be an apology. And guys, let me just address the elephant in the room. On top of everything that I just mentioned, dark humor, the lack of self-awareness, the differences in how people were raised, there is a literary crisis. The newer generation, for a bunch of reasons that I don't necessarily feel like is their fault, are not as book smart as the previous generations. There are 2024 studies that suggest that 1/3 of 8th graders can't do basic reading. Why do I personally think this is? Obviously, I think that dealing with the whole cough disease ruined a lot of shit. Education was thrown off and essentially was left up to online school that you just kind of had to get by to pass, and whatever your parents decided to do at home. And as we know, guys, some parents, they're just not the best. They were going through their own thing, and so they weren't necessarily taking time to teach their second graders how to read. So then 3 years go by, and by the time the dude is ready for middle school, you don't know shit. And so they're behind, especially in the literary aspect. So in English, when we learn about sarcasm, tone, context, irony, all of that context is a lost art. So if you see something as a joke, you either escalate it or you don't know it's a joke. Now granted, once again, I do think that irony is a huge part of Gen Z humor, but I don't know, I feel like there'd be way more of a fundamental grasp of what is okay and what isn't if literary devices were explained to them rather than just something that's just a part of their lives, right? There's one thing to live your life a certain way, and it's another thing to understand why you are living your life that way. Further playing into the ignorance, because the newer generation, they kind of dumb, bro. I ain't even gonna sit there and lie to y'all, bro. They kind of dumb. Another huge part of morality and the things that we dictate as acceptable or not, regardless of whether you support this or not, we have to admit is religion. If you're not religious now, if you grew up in a religious household, chances are you're going to carry the morals and ethics of that household. Obviously, things can change, but for the most part, a huge foundation of who you become is how you're raised. Gen Z is the least religious generation ever. 34% of people identify as Christians, and 40% are unaffiliated. And so this leads to moral relativists. Lying is fine as long as it feels right. I remember being told when I was a kid that if I did certain things wrong that I was going to burn for an eternity, right? And whether you feel like that's right or wrong, it certainly plays a part in how people grow up, even down to just like manners and obeying parents. This was a huge aspect that a lot of people who did grow up in religious households feel like they have to abide by simply because it's just baked into their brain. And in my perspective, when morality is self-defined, doesn't bullying just become whatever you said or get offended by? Like, if a big part of our moral compass is being directed by our parents and the environment that we grow up in, and that's no longer deemed as important, the only other things we kind of have to go based off of is what we consume in our normal lives. And as I explained, with the internet being at least half of everyday life, what does that look like? Pair that with the modern tension of just letting people express themselves in any way, shape, or form. We are the generation that tells people that they can literally be who or whatever they want. And in that same space, We're the generation that is consumed by dark memes and no filter. And so I feel like that creates a little bit of tension. Let people express themselves, dark memes included, terrorism jokes included, and require safe spaces. Like, doesn't that naturally conflict? Both sides have merit, but every side creates conflict. And sometimes bullying hides in plain sight. Like, where do we draw the line between free speech and safe speech? At a point in life where both are deemed as almost equally important. Granted, guys, a lot of this for me is just speculation based on societal norms and my own observation. I'm not the younger side of Gen Z. I don't know exactly what goes on in a lot of those classrooms. I can't even say. I kind of do have an idea. I remember like 2 years ago, I went to go visit my old middle school, and it was a charter school. So if you know about New York charter schools, you know they used to be strict as hell, almost to the point where court cases had to be opened. It was almost corrupt, right? Sneezing the wrong way can get you sent out of class. Sitting without your back straight might get you detention, and explaining your side of the story to the teacher might get you suspended, right? Miss one homework assignment and you can't eat lunch with your peers, and lunch was only 30 minutes, and we got gym once a week if we were lucky. In the 8th grade, we didn't get any gym at all, right? So I just tell you that to preface that school was strict as hell. Now, one of my childhood friends invited me up because he was like, you know, why not pull up and visit? You know, I was a big music dude back in the day, and you know, I was a pretty talented musician and shit. So, you know, so my friend was like, you know, the music teacher wants to see you, come up. I was like, all right, bet. Came up. Brother, why is it that one of the first interactions we have with a middle schooler is someone going up to my friend and telling him that he looks like Blackie Chan, and he got away with it and ran away? Back in my day, they tried to give me a sexual misconduct suspension because I was tucking in my shirt, and this kid just casually gets away with colorism. He basically got away with murder. And then I just remember sitting there with my jaw dropped, and I had to ask the teachers, like what's gonna happen to, like, do you know what would have happened back in the day if I did that? And all she could say was, yeah, I know, things change, the new generation, they're just not the same. And I'm just like, wow, like what can you do? I could just imagine growing up in an environment like that where someone can essentially say whatever they want and can't get in trouble for it. And imagine the tension that can probably be created in that environment. And it's honestly just kind of crazy, but once again, this is all just kind of me speculating. I've always realized that bullying isn't just villains and heroes, but there are shades of gray in between. But in this generation, it's the purest shade of gray that you can get, because like, how do you even perceive bullying? How do you navigate the rocky hemispheres of bullying? Comment your story and let me know. I'm genuinely just curious. But yeah, that's just something that I kind of wanted to talk about. Once again, if you like my content, follow me on Twitch. We talk about similar things, but just live and in a more interactive setting. Follow Sparky No Thoughts, which if you can't catch me on Twitch, you can watch my segments, and follow my third channel, which is going to be the No Lube channel. Just raw me, day in the lives, maybe some fashion stuff. I don't know, man. You're just gonna have to subscribe to see what I do. Yo, I appreciate y'all for watching. I'm out this joint.